I'd like to welcome Sir Phillips, the Director of Finance, Planning, Performance and Attendance to observe the meeting, and he's due to start at the end of August. Rhiannon Beckett here, who's our Interim Director of Finance, Richard Palmer, Assistant Director of Planning and Performance, and Nia Cole will be joining us shortly as our Head of Mwy na Gaerau Welsh Language Unit. I've got apologies for absence from Sian Richards, Director of Digital Data and Engagement, on holiday, lucky. And are there any interests to be declared that are pertinent to today's agenda that are not already declared? No, very good. And just to remind everybody that my independent member colleagues have all read all the papers. I think we'll all find that helpful as we go through this meeting. Okay. So I'm going to ask us to consider the draft minutes of the board meeting held on the 24th of June 2026. Are there any issues of accuracy in these minutes you'd like to raise? Can you move to the action log from the board meeting held on the 24th? Are there any issues on the action log you wish to comment on or question? Can I take you back to the minutes, therefore, please, of the board meeting of the 24th of June? Are there any matters arising that you wish to raise that are not covered by the action log or the agenda for today's meeting? In that case, can I ask that you allow me to sign these board minutes off?
Yes.
Okay. So the chair's report there for you. I'd just like to point out that we've had a really uplifting annual general meeting and showcase event earlier on this morning, which I think was really enjoyable, interesting and stimulating. And going on that theme, I attended the Aberystwyth University degree ceremony, and it was an absolute joy to see people from the local community as well as the nurses that had qualified. And there was one particular moment when they all took their oath. And it was a moment when I think as a university, they felt really very grown up at that point. It's something to take someone through a degree and then see them become registrants. Last Friday, I attended my 9th Clinical Fellows meeting, and it's their end of year. So I see them as they come in, and I see them give their presentations. The two things, multi-professional, really diverse. Every one of them had clearly grown personally, but was fascinating. Almost every one of them said that the key thing that had worked for them was the friendship and understanding they have of what their colleagues do and provide in healthcare. It was really uplifting. And I suppose the other joyful thing was going to the NHS Confed conference and the expo in Manchester, and it was like, digital AI on steroids. And centre stage of that was our own offer around AI Mentor. And I think our people really did do the organisation justice. And despite a whole load of people who were convinced they could break it, they failed. So it was tested, road tested on the day. That was joyful. But the other thing is, do you know the other man's grass always looks greener until you really have a look? And I came away thinking how lucky I am to be in Wales, and the aspiration and the feeling, positive feeling, with the new government about the role of the NHS and how the leadership of the NHS should be working. It's been reinvigorating. So I hope that continues. And I think that some of the things that we've been looking at in here, particularly the work with young people finding work after training, particularly the role of the different professions, and most importantly, the culture of collective, compassionate leadership. The downside has been the number of reports across the United Kingdom around maternity, neonatal, and obstetrics. I think it is really serious. And I don't mean they're serious reports. I think it needs to be dealt with really seriously, right from our engagement with young people going into training and their tension placements and the way that people are trained. I think it's really important and supported to continue. I don't think I want to say anything else other than I made some. I got your support to do Chair's action, so I'd like you to ratify the Chair's action taken on the 25th of June to approve the invoice from Digital Healthcare Wales for the Microsoft Enterprise agreement for 526,011p. Is that 11p? No, and £11 for a period of 1 year. And will you ratify that, please?
Yes.
I'm so relieved. And then ratify the Chair's action on the 29th of June to approve the contract value uplift of 50%. That's taking from 100,000 to 150,000, including VAT, to the existing contract for digital management consultancy support Agored project. Can I ask you to ratify that, please? Elizabeth has been a board member for how long now?
2 or 3 months. 3 months.
You've certainly done the rounds.
Oh yeah.
You've certainly done the rounds.
Not finished yet.
No, but
I'm only about 2/3 through.
Well, I'm willing to support Elizabeth in becoming a member of the Education Commissioning and Quality Committee. Ask you to approve, please.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So there we have it. That's the end of the Chair's report. Alex, Chief Exec's report.
Thank you. I think the main issue to draw attention to in my report is obviously the ongoing work around the graduates into employment position, some high level updates in the paper, but obviously the key milestone for us is to have done as much work on this as possible by the 24th of August with colleagues in the spirit of the Cabinet Minister, really encouraging everybody to find a role for everybody that is graduating from our programmes in nursing and midwifery, to be able to update them on hopefully a much more positive position by that point. So we're midway through that period at the moment. There are lots and lots of hands on this to senior level right across the NHS. So that is encouraging. We just need to make sure that that results in the outcome that we want. There's been really good progress over the last 4 weeks in relation to nursing. A lot more roles have been made available during the last 4 weeks, so that's really positive. We need to keep going on that, and we need to crack the midwifery issue as well. And obviously that resonates with what the chairman has just said around the issues in maternity and neonatal services. So significant work ongoing there, also in collaboration with the professional bodies and the universities, and it's felt like a real collaborative effort where everybody is on the same page trying to achieve the same outcome, and that's made our job a little bit easier when you consider the system that we're trying to coordinate and steer in that direction. So really grateful for it's been a team effort, lots of people on this table involved, lots of staff in the organisation, and as I said earlier, lots of partners across Wales. And we are just providing an update to Welsh Government by the end of next week. So we will share that with board members when that's available. In other business, just a couple of meetings to mention that had taken place in the last week or so. We had a joint executive team meeting with HS Wales Shared Services Partnership last week to really focus on some of those strategic interface issues between the two organisations, which is special, and not really captured by the SLA that is in place with all of the organisations. So things like single lead employer, bursary arrangements, workforce data, and a number of other things. And so we've agreed that will be a regular meeting for us to really follow up on how we coordinate and align ourselves so we don't duplicate and we're on the same path. I also had a meeting earlier in the week with James Owen, Chief Executive of MEDA, and again that was really helpful in sharing what some of the different and common challenges are at the moment. And again, we agreed that in the autumn it'll be good to get teams together, have a bit more of an in-depth discussion in the context of the education strategy on what the issues are facing future apprenticeships in Wales, universities, and linking in with the fact that the government has already signalled a review of education, particularly higher education, I think.
Higher and further.
Higher and obviously by that point we do have a programme for government as well. So felt like there were a lot of strategic opportunities there to work differently and better with MEDA. But we also met with Social Care Wales and the new chairperson there. Yeah, it's okay. I'll do it instead. So that was again useful. Obviously, a new chair. I think it was the first day actually. Coming to post, and again just considering in the context of the government's intention to develop a long-term workforce plan, what that means for our previous collaborative working on a health and social care workforce strategy. And actually we had a follow-up meeting this week and we will get our colleagues to start to understand that. So that may be something we want to bring back at the August board development session to have a bigger conversation about early days, and this will be a government plan or strategy, it won't be our strategy. And then yesterday we met with Audit Wales,
A delight.
which is always a positive meeting actually, which is again a reflection I think of all the good work that people do on building good relationships. So again, some positive feedback on interaction with the finance team over the last couple of months. But also flagging that the structured assessment this year, I know this will be probably discussed through the audit committee shortly, but we'll be focusing on impact, not just how we got processes in place, but our organisations delivering impact and value. So that was helpful to have that early conversation with them. So I'll leave it there. I'm happy to take any questions on anything that's in the report. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Alex that you want to pick up now?
I think I welcome sort of the discussions. To point, I suppose, for us is how we keep influencing that so that we don't find ourselves in sort of the similar situation, knowing that affordability is key, but also with the other professions that we might not have seen and we touched upon in other papers. So quite keen to see how that influence and agenda plays out.
One of the things I'm really pleased to hear is the input into the shared services relationship and the singular importance of their role to our work and our reputational standing. And it'll be interesting to see how that develops. And I'm sure the board will need to be updated as it goes on, particularly around assurance. That's where we've heard commentary in the past. But we cannot end up where we've ended up repeatedly. So it's important that we improve it. Okay, with that then, and move on to my favourite subject, the integrated medium-term plan.
Okay, so this paper provides Bwrdd with the revised version of the HIW Integrated Medium-Term Plan 2026-29 that was submitted to the Welsh Government on the 29th of June alongside the baseline review. As you all know, we received feedback from the Welsh Government following the INTP's March submission, which requested additional delivery detail to support performance management and a greater focus on strategic workforce planning, pending which the INTP was not approvable. The good thing from our perspective is that the better part of the requested detail had been generated during the plan's development to support our own organisational performance management requirements. So, following receipt of the Welsh Government's feedback, we fine-tuned the detailed objective templates to make sure that they were ready for submission, and they can be found in Appendix B. And to avoid the lay reader needing to work their way through all 70,000 words, we provided a summary list of all development objectives, including their quarterly milestones and performance measures, at Appendix A. In addition, the request for feedback gave us an opportunity to introduce some further tweaks, including changes to the PESEL analysis to reflect the revised submission date and the recent change of government, the reframing and adjustment of the development objectives and core work programmes to ensure full alignment with the remit letter, and updates to Chapter 4, comprising the development objectives, with a particular focus on highlighting HIW's contribution to strategic workforce planning. There's been no change to the INTP's overall ambition, the breadth of its development objectives, or the plan's financial deliverability. We're therefore asking Bwrdd to note the revised HIW Integrated Medium-Term Plan 26-29 that was submitted to the Welsh Government on the 29th of June 2026.
Thank you. Questions, comments from members?
I did have one. I said I welcome the additional detail. I think it gives us clearer line of sight on how the objectives will actually be achieved. I think for us, as we move through the year, we'll probably see this in the performance reporting, is allow us to see whether those objectives were delivered, but the actual difference it makes in the NHS. I think capturing that's important, but no good.
Yeah, echo what Dawn has just said, and which was going to be a point I was going to make. But similarly, just now, you know, we're 4 months in, we've resubmitted it in June. Have we heard any feedback in relation to that? And when, if not, when we might expect that, how it's landed in this resubmission? We haven't had any feedback unless Richard's going to reveal something. I don't know. So I think next week we will follow that up to request an update. I mean, I think in previous years, if I'm right, it has sometimes stretched to the end of the summer before INTPs have been approved for organisations. So to some extent, we're not in that position we normally are, and we carry on until apprehended. So the work is carrying on. It's not waiting for that, but I think it would be good to understand, particularly the baseline review, what the next action is, because there is an issue in there that was flagged in our remit letter around £5 million, which has been deemed to be non-recurrent this year. And and we need to work plan around that the sooner the better in relation to that aspect of it. So I think next week is probably giving them enough time to perhaps have a look at it and to see what's happening.
Thank you, that's helpful.
So perhaps there's a principle. Before we send answers, what's the time scale for how receiving a response? Because this was all about process, but giving more evidence. Therefore, I think it's only fair that governance is an up and down thing. It's not one way. So it would be good to have an expectation. Having said that, there is a new government. So we need to be mindful that there are bigger things going on, perhaps in their world. Okay, are you happy with that? Happy with this? So I'm asking you to note the revised HEIW integrated medium-term plan that was submitted to the Welsh Government on the 29th of June. Note it also went in with the baseline assessment. And can I thank the team that's produced this work? Thank you very much. 3.2, Statutory Mandatory Training Reform Programme Update. Sounds fascinating.
Good. Thank you. So I think it is, and I think what we'll see is that this is an extremely positive and ambitious programme of work that will make a difference to the workforce and impact on changing and availability of our workforce to be focused on patient care. But so let me take you through some of the key points through the paper. So paper really sets out the proposed implementation plan for reforming statutory and mandatory training across NHS Wales, and this is subject to Welsh Government approval. The remit letter required us to submit a plan in Q1, which has been achieved, and that's what I'm just going to talk you through today. So we've been given clear remit to lead this work in the social partnership. This is a new area of responsibility for us, and we have identified it as a priority project, given the impact that this will have across the system. Our ambition is to move statutory and mandatory training away from being primarily a compliance exercise towards a more meaningful, outcome-focused system of essential learning. An independent review was undertaken, and this identified significant issues with the current approach, including unclear governance, duplication, variable quality, technology barriers, and inconsistent implementation. This also highlighted the burden that this places on staff with limited evidence that all requirements are improving outcomes and making the right difference. So the aim of this work is to move from a compliance-based model to something that's more meaningful and a more meaningful outcome focused to essential learning. The plan that we have developed sets out a 3-year programme working through a discovery phase, then design and delivery. Our first year will focus on the governance, baselining our current requirements and putting those controls in place. Later phases will rationalise and redesign the training, improve digital systems, and then support that national implementation. The initial report identified significant benefits. It is estimated that the reform could reduce the training burden by 25 to 30%, which would then release time for patient care and other continuing professional development, improve staff experience, strengthen governance, and create a clearer link between training, quality, and patient safety outcomes. The report also identified potential annual efficiency gains of 7 to 9 million, although to deliver this, there will be dedicated capacity and investment that will be needed. As I said, I think there's a significant opportunity here, reducing the training burden, improving staff experience, releasing time for patient care and development, the things that we would absolutely want to deliver through this. We will need to manage, we will need capacity, we will need to manage some risks, and we will need the system with us to deliver. But certainly so far, engagement on this has been extremely positive, and people see this as an opportunity for change. There is a financial ask in the paper. We are waiting for Welsh Government feedback, and subject to that, we may need to have a conversation about in organisation slippage, but that will come as we've had the Welsh Government feedback. The plan is here to be noted for assurance. So thank you.
Questions?
I very much support the paper on the principle of something meaningful rather than compliance, the right thing to do. The other aspect of it is also about the portability, because it's sensible that it is portable. Staff move around the system. Just as an aside, we've had discussions in the audit committee about counter-fraud training, where it's made mandatory in some organisations and not in others per se. I'm just mindful that there's a fighting fraud strategy has just been published, which implies it's going to be made mandatory. So how do you stop the sort of circulars coming out from Welsh Government in the meantime? Because there's a risk of things being added to this long list if we're not careful.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's key. I think one of the principles we've been talking about is one in, one out. So if we're adding, then thinking about our principles. So helpful. That's thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Along with Alan, I welcome this, and it's long overdue that there are these changes come in. I suppose my question relates sort of, two parts. I wasn't clear where the programme board reported into and who it will consist of. And then in terms of the work streams, what I wasn't sure is where in those work streams will we actually be able to identify the experience and the increased time, patient care and professional development, because that was a key part, as you know, of the consultant consortium recommendation, which made the broad statements about how much time is released, around the number of 12-hour shifts and how much saving. So will one of these groups under the programme board actually be reviewing that? Because that's not our time, that's going to be in the health boards. So are they going to be required to capture that and be able to demonstrate how that is being reinvested, as opposed to saying, right, well, we've saved this, but so we'll cut this money to do it, which doesn't seem to be the spirit of this.
Yeah. So I think just in your points about governance framework, that's this was a piece of work that came to us in our remit lecture in March, and the plan has gone in. So I think this is the work that we're doing now, right, in terms of what that will look like. We've engaged across the system and broad support, and have had an initial conversation with Welsh Partnership Forum again, who has supported. This has to be undertaken in social partnership, so their involvement will be key. But I think we're waiting just to see, in terms of the plan, I think we're not waiting, we're continuing with our thinking, but we're looking for that feedback from Welsh Government to enable us to establish the framework that will oversee this.
Right, and that will include how you measure.
Yes, yes, the measurement is key. It'll be about time released.
Yes,
and that's the bit we think that's potentially conservative, but I think that's where the engagement and the monitoring and the use of technology to make sure that the training is targeted to individuals. There's not waste in that system.
Okay,
Elizabeth, and then John.
2 points from me. As well as having it portable between organisations in Wales, are you going to ensure portability between professional required training and employment NHS required training, if you see the difference? So as part of revalidation and things, are you going to make sure that if you're required to do something as part of your registration revalidation that you may not do within your employment, that you can port that across to the NHS?
So this is purely in terms of our statutory mandate.
Yeah, I think the question still applies.
Okay.
Okay.
So let's have a conversation about that. So I'm fully in that.
Yeah,
understanding
I mean,
that.
it might be better to have it with Tom's team, but I think there possibly is potential for overlap. And the second one, and this is a bit personal, I seem to be asking questions very oddly at the moment. Is are you going to look at induction as well? I'm halfway through my mandatory training, and I'm about halfway through my number of hours for induction, and I'm already in excess of about 25.
Noted. Noted. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because that's an opportunity to crack an awful lot of these in a very efficient way. So yeah, I think whilst that might not be within the technical scope, that's definitely something we need to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the paper. I think this is welcome to work, and it highlights a number of issues that we've all talked about in terms of the disparity that exists across Wales, and what is mandatory in some areas, where it's not in another, and etc. So, in terms of the work that's been done, going forward, where will control lie in terms of what is mandatory?
I don't have the answer for you. We will, that's what we're working through. I think the governance arrangements that are part of this work, that are part of year one work, will need to define that control.
That's key, isn't it?
That absolutely is key. And at the moment that sits in another organisation, and then and is organised in a different way. And I guess it goes back to the point Alan made around, where it comes, what the roots into it being mandatory training for our workforce. So I think all of that comes back into the governance framework looks like. And then, we've identified a one in, one out. We've talked, that's what we've been talking about, but actually how we make that happen, how we're controlling that, how we've got common understanding across Wales as well. It's all part.
So I would welcome, Chair, clear governance structure around mandatory training. I'm sure
Governance mapped.
Because that is fundamentally a lot of the problem at the moment. And my second question, if I may, and that relates to how are we going to evidence measurable benefits from these changes, and reassure ourselves and us as a board that these changes are not resulting actually in unintended greater risks.
And that's a core principle of the work. The work is about improvement, and the work is about being clear as I said, it's about this training being meaningful, impactful, making the right difference. So again, I think in this design phase now, that's got to be a core principle.
Okay.
That this isn't about adding to or changing, but creating an equal and worse.
Can I suggest you add time? Because that relates to one of the questions that Elizabeth's posed. There are optimum opportunities. There are peak contact points where you can kill many birds with one stone. And that for me, that timely thing is not having half your workforce that should have not having it. Yeah. So timely is there's an opportunity.
Just coming back to Elizabeth's question about the professional and the statutory mandatory, I was just trying to think in my head, Elizabeth, about these scenarios. And I think safeguarding and life support training are two examples where that is. And I think Helen touched on it actually in her introduction. Part of the ambition of this is that you don't get people like intensive care specialists who've gone through the highest level of advanced life support training to then have to do the mandatory basic life support on the machine. So it's broadly those two areas, that is very much part of this.
It's
Thanks, Chair. I mean, I support this. I know it's within our remit letter, and I don't disagree with anything that's my only question again comes back to portability. And if we're looking for portability across Wales, are we looking for portability across the UK? Because presumably that what should be mandatory for a nurse in Wrexham would be the same in Chester. So I'm just wondering, given what's required and the funding that needs to go in to transport this, are others looking at this ahead of, already done, that we can piggyback on rather than duplication?
I think those are helpful points, and we'll build that into we are building that into the work. I don't know what's happening across in England, but that will be part of the discovery phase. So that's really good.
Just ask a question. You mentioned sort of timing. I mean, we're waiting for funding, and so we're funding that at the minute. When are we hoping to know that this has been funded further?
I think we'd hope to have feedback. We will follow up. I think the person on leave, we're following that up. We raised it in a meeting last week, so we will follow it up again. I think the reality is we'll be having a conversation about using slippage, and in that space, I'm not overly optimistic that we'll be given additional funding for this, but we're just waiting for that formal feedback. You ask again.
I was just going to comment on the portability question. It's worth noting it does exist in the system, it just doesn't work very well at the moment. As somebody who works in Cardiff and Vale and here, I haven't had to repeat them. It's just a bit painful to get the system to catch up and recognise you've done it once. So sometimes it feels like it's easier to do it again. But the principle is already embedded, it's just not operationalised very well.
I suppose I was moving on beyond it. It was actually this idea as well that the core course, or whether it be controlling infection or whatever, it should be consistent.
I think we will take any learning that we can, recognising the ambitions that we have with this program.
Yeah, it's like having a bit of fresh meat, isn't it? This is new to us, and there's so much to go out here. So I think the remit letter required us to put in a plan as to how we were going to do this work by the end of June. So essentially, that's kind of the bit that we've got to. Sounds like this discovery bit is important to bring back more development conversation, to pick up all of these different viewpoints, because we've not had the opportunity to really sort of think about this before, because it's not really been in our role to do that. So I think once this piece of work kicks off the discovery phase, then I think maybe we put that back in the autumn and get into it in a bit more detail. And I think some of the questions, the governance really important, but also quality control, really important. The consistency issue, the AI stuff that Alex was talking to us about this morning. How does that help? There's so many opportunities here, we must make sure that the lack of formal agreement on funding doesn't stop us progressing it.
I was just going to come back from the skills, because there is a UK core skills framework, so that allows portability, but there's just a lot more in mandatory training beyond core skills.
So it's a very, very simple thing. We're asked to note note this plan. I think there's been a lot of discussion. This is more interesting than it appears. This is more interesting than it appears. It just struck me that one of the things we need to consider as an organisation is when there is a request to do something like this, the brand Once for Wales, intro anthem there, right? It just speaks of evening up. It just speaks of raising the bar and consistency. I think if you played out the amount of money the NHS pays out in terms of claims for where things go fundamentally wrong, how much of that is traceable back into lack of consistency or adherence to statutory mandatory training? And it's a really interesting hole to fall in. So impact assessment right? You could do it on an individual by saying how many other numbers and what they've done, and there's consistency in that. But so what if you did get everybody, you know, consistent and everybody up to a level? What is the impact? We assume there is a big impact. Well, the question is, can we demonstrate more impact in a system that's going to be moving from centralized bed-based into community-based? So statutory, mandatory and community is going to be big business. I think this could be a really fundamental building block for a different aspect of quality, safety, and okay. So we've noted it. The board's interested. Speaking on their behalf, I think the independent members would like to see an iteration coming back, regardless of whether they think it's a good idea, right? I think it's got a lot to go for it in avoiding harm and creating quality. Okay. 3.3. What a day to have this. Climate strategy, climate smart strategy.
So this is the new HIW Climate Smart Strategy 2026 to 2031, which has been developed as the successor to the previous Biodiversity and Decarbonisation Strategy 2021 through 2025. The strategy reflects developing climate challenges and a refreshed legislative landscape, including the NHS Wales Decarbonisation Strategic Delivery Plan 25 to 30, the Adaptation Strategy for Wales 2024, and the Nature Recovery Action Plan from 2026. Compared to its predecessor, the new strategy has an increased focus on the wider NHS Wales workforce, including the role of the All Wales Climate Smart Education Group, to which HIW is a major contributor. And both prescient and timely, in view of recent heat waves, the inclusion of climate adaptation and resilience, reflecting the need for us to adapt to the impacts of climate change and build resilience across health and social care and the wider public sector. To describe our climate smart ambitions, the old strategy's 5 areas of action have been condensed into 3 strategic priorities that seek to better align to the evolving strategic landscape whilst giving greater focus to HIW's activities. The 3 priorities are education, workforce and system leadership, sustainable organisation and delivery, and climate resilience, adaptation and nature. And to ensure that these priorities are delivered and their impact and benefits measured, our next steps will be to develop our climate action plan for 26 to 31, review and relaunch the Climate Smart Education and Training Action Plan, and develop our KPIs and a sustainability dashboard that will allow us to baseline our current performance and thereby indicate progress. With us asking Bwrdd to approve the HIW Climate Smart Strategy 2026 to 2031 so that we might commence its implementation.
Okay. Questions, comments? Well, have you been on a ward in the hospital ward in the last 3 weeks?
Yes.
And
It was fun.
how many operations have been cancelled? How many post-op infections have there been? How many heart failure deaths have there been? The excess death in the 1 week was I think it was 250. And we're about to have a real issue about dehydration, which is a common core factor, multifactorial iatrogenicity. And we've got an aging population. And so my question boils down to what extent are we training staff to cope with extremes of temperature? Is it part of core training? And we've got an awful lot of prescribers and an awful lot of people receiving drugs. And it only takes a few degrees to change the hematocrit, the urea, and we're dealing with hospital admission or people being very unwell. I think that this paper, again, is a Trojan horse. And it's not about to get better quickly. It's going to be a recurring issue, and it's as bad in terms of hypothermia as it is in hyperthermia.
I think it's a really good point, because I think this is about a workforce that is perhaps climate smart and aware, but not necessarily about what the changes in clinical care may be as a result of climate change. I think we just need to do a little bit more to think about that. For all the reasons that you just articulated. I think that despite the fact that we take this seriously as an organisation, we're just a small part, aren't we? And I think we did some scenario planning training the other week. And it's quite clear when you do that climate change is front and centre of anything that's in the next 10 years, and yet we don't talk about that in that way across the NHS. So I do think that what you just made around, I'm not sure, Richard should tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure we've got that fully covered in this strategy.
Can I just give an anecdote? There was a nurse chair in Cwmtab. We had a group of nurses from University of South Wales, student nurses, who did a project called Drink a Drop. And that Drink a Drop was every student nurse was challenged to ask patients on whatever ward they were on to have a drop of water, and actually to pour, not just to ask them, but to pour. They put a jug with a cover on, a different cover on, which said how long that water had been there. And it had a massive impact on deep vein thrombosis, pulmonary embolus, post-op infection, hydration rates, obviously, but people mobilizing post-op, and temperature that people are being nursed in. And this would go into, this is equally for nursing homes, for residential homes, and in people's own homes. I just think it's a fundamental care.
I think the climate's changing quicker than the curriculum. So without a doubt, the curriculum won't be covered for the climate we're seeing. I think the other area is our workforce is working in this heat.
Yes.
You know, it's not just being in the side room, it's being in the side room with your PPE, isn't it? You know, you stick a pinny on plastic, your mask and everything else, and then you ask them to do a 12-hour shift. And then you ask them to be compassionate throughout those 12 hours when they might have health conditions themselves and they're dehydrating. And so I think there's a lot more here that we should all be discussing, actually. The drought element, I think there's 3 areas in Wales where we run MRIs and CT scanners and they all need water. They need, we have a big need for water, and we've got schools that are shut and we've got families who can't financially cope. So actually there's a lot here, isn't there, that we're just sitting in our air-conditioned room, but actually there's a huge impact on our existing workforce as well as how we're supporting patients.
I agree with everything that has been said. I think curricula are different across all the different healthcare professions and have evolved at different rates. When I look at the medical ones, for example, there are features in this and the expectation to be able to adjust what you do, and pharmacy have the whole parameters around dehydration and prescribing, but there's a lot more that can be done. But our biggest problem is what Sam was talking about now. Unless capital investment in the NHS is change in direction, then the environments within which everybody is working and being treated are not fit for the current world.
So something like the Drink the Drop camp, I'm not saying that one, something simple can have a very big impact if it's done by everybody. And it's not about changing the world, it's about changing what you should do normally, right? It's pointless taking a blood check on urea if you know they're not drinking.
Yeah, let's take that away and see what's our role to encourage in this respect, as opposed to, what the health board should be getting on and doing this as part of patient care. But let's just have another little look and make sure we've got the right hooks in here to not forget that point that we need to train staff to customer notes.
So in here, I'm picking this up, Richard, on a thread in here where you've got train the staff about net zero. Now, I think politically, net zero is about to go out the window and we're going to have something else. But it led me to think that what we haven't put in here, and for very good reason, is political influence. And what we've just had a good discussion on is how climate change is going to impact on the healthcare we provide and the effect on our staff. So while we may not be wanting to do political influencing in the sense of our personal views on climate change and carbon reduction, we do need to politically influence on the impact on the service going forward. And I think that would be usefully reflected in here somewhere. It's a very, it would have to be nuanced very carefully.
Yes.
But if we are going to see this continuing rise in temperature, which I think we are, then we need to be doing some preparation in terms of our own remit. Sorry, I'm getting a bit convoluted now. That we need to be raising that to others' attention. That's all I'm really saying.
Okay. John?
So I welcome the paper and accept that the paper is a strategic paper that we'll have subsequently a delivery plan and we'll have objectives and KPIs. It'll be very interesting to see how we as an organisation perceive the success KPIs to look like based on the conversations. Not going to be easy. However, I guess my question is, can the board get confidence and assurance that we have capacity, leadership capacity, skill capacity within the organisation against all the other competing priorities we've got to deliver on this?
Asking you to note what's been said around the table. There's a question about preparedness of staff and training, right? And that ask the exec team to come back with their views on what our role is and maybe to produce action. To note John's point about affordability and what have you, but I'm asking you basically to approve this climate strategy 2631, which we can amend at any time.
We can.
Yeah. So this is, it doesn't, so I'm suggesting we review this in 6 months. Okay. I think there will be huge interest. France has already declared, when I was a youngster, there was one summer where there were 10,000 excess deaths in the elderly, and that was caused by their healthcare system and social care system, everybody going on holiday at the same time. And they didn't have a public health system. On the back of that, they've now got a public health system and they've got a coordinated health and social care, but they still produce figures of excess deaths. We've also got excess deaths directly related, and they will feed through. So I think this is going to be a hot issue, but it'll equally be a cold issue. It'll be about temperature control with people on, okay, right. 3.4. Thanks for that discussion. Two interesting, but maybe related issues. Right, digital and data strategy update, year 3. on a journey. Who's leading on this one?
So because Sean isn't here.
Yeah.
She wanted us to note the update. Just happy to take any questions offline if there are issues that need to be discussed. And obviously we do feed specific themes from the strategy into for development time to time.
Yeah. In my discussions with independent members, one of the things I think would be helpful is for this, for them to have read it. There are questions, there are issues that want to be aired. Could we take this to the next board development session? Yeah, or do we fit in a specific session around this? Whichever you feel is more
Probably a specific session, I think.
specific session.
It's a lot,
Would-
it's
would-
often there.
Would independent members feel comfortable with it without a specific session focused on? Yeah,
Yes,
I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of positive delivery across this, but there's some significant themes which I think need to be discussed.
for me, it's about opportunity. It's not just opportunity, but actually cashing in on opportunity and looking a little bit at what have we learned. Right? Yeah. So can I ask that we note this? It's paper. Note, recognize the increasing strategic contribution of digital, AI and workforce intelligence to the business, core business of HEIW and NHS Wales. And we will organise a specific, can I still be around when we have that specific? Not after September the 30th. Thank you. We're a little ahead of time, but I'm going to suggest we do actually have a 10-minute comfort break at this point. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I'd like us to open the meeting at 2:10. Right. Welcome back, everybody. Croeso nôl. Agenda item 4.1 is always of interest, the integrated performance report.
So
You're
this is,
having quite an afternoon.
I'm not even halfway yet.
No,
If you don't like the voice.
no, you're doing fine and you're sticking to the script. Well done.
This is the first performance report for 2026-27, the format of which builds on that which we employed last year, but reconfigured to align with the 4 pillars of the NHS Wales accountability framework. There is also potential to tweak further in year in line with our accountability conditions as their implications become clearer. To note also that we're reporting the delivery of the revised version of the IMTP that we discussed earlier, including some of the slight revisions to our objectives and the changes in activity nomenclature. Performance is arguably where one might expect at this point of the year. The vast majority of the objectives, circa 90%, are on track as at May 2026, with only a small number assessed as having an advised status, and one concerning phase 2 of the Endoscopy Academy granted alert status. In terms of core delivery work programmes, all but one relating to Welsh Government regulatory reform had a sure status at May 2026, whilst all supporting work programmes were on track. Building on last year, we're continuing to try and increase our focus on impact, benefits, and the so what, helped by the way in which our performance measures have been described in our IMTP. And we've also introduced a focus on the HIW priority projects, slides 7 and 8, and we'll be giving further thought as to how we present said priority projects in future reports, including whether there is, for example, scope to explore in more detail where potentially useful for board. We're therefore asking that board receive the first 26-27 performance report for assurance in respect of HIW's performance for the period ending May 2026.
Comments, colleagues?
So, Chair, I would say that overall it provides us with a strong report, strong, assurance. There are questions around Cody, which we've agreed how we're going to deal with that, so I won't bring them up. I note the point around the Endoscopy Academy and how that's been managed. What does stand out is the decline further in the Fraser. And I think we've, as a board, said previously, we're an education organisation, we're a learning organisation, and this is now, this variation is now going in the wrong direction. So I'm presuming we know exactly where the decline is, we know exactly who to target in terms of support and actions, and so I'm just seeking some reassurance that we're clear what the pathway is, so that at next board we've got a very different picture, please.
And I can give you all of the assurance. We know exactly the performance by each directorate and the detail underneath all of that that's discussed in directorate business meetings. We know the reasons. It's a consistency across the organisation, and there's varying reasons driving to it. Some of it as simple as doing it but not recording it, which we've talked about before. If you don't record it, it isn't done. But we know that there is performance. We know that we've had some organisational change. We know we've got some small amount of senior manager absence, which has impacted then on a cascade of a team. But I think that's one of the things we were talking about this as a, in terms of kind of this being a cyclical thing. Actually, through the work that we're doing on the target operating model, is there something else that we can do to be really clear about timelines now with our workforce, so that we don't get into this pattern where next month it's improved and we see a few months of that and then it dips down again. So I think we're conscious of that, and that's something that we will look at.
Thank you, Heather. So I look forward to a positive outcome.
Yeah, no, just to emphasise, you know, my frustration is this has become a pattern.
Yeah.
And we've got to, therefore, that we're not doing the right thing. It's a pattern, so we need to put in place a more structured approach to this. And yeah, absolutely, as you say, John, we're a workforce organisation, so we need to value what Prince brings us in terms of that opportunity to have that conversation with all of our staff, and for them to raise finance for support and development as well. So I think we need to not just get back on track for this year, but we need to then sort out not having the problem.
I think we've more or less gone out in and around. I think overall it's a good picture, but I just found myself when I was reading to asking that real basic question of are we on track, and having that, what was did it happen? If not, why not in the new date? And I suppose what you've just said, that probably will come about, having that little granular detail just to make sure we as a board have a line of sight.
Yeah, thank you for this. I do welcome priority projects section. That was really helpful. There is just one thing which I understand why it's not here, but on page 15, it talks about the CPD strategy, which is down to say it was coming to this board. It's not here, and I know why, because I asked the question, but I think this just needs to reflect the change as to why it's not coming here, why it hasn't come here in July.
Do you want me to say out loud?
It might be helpful, yes. I just followed it up.
Yeah, so it was going to come here, but it hadn't gone to the Welsh Government Business Committee, and they asked that it went to them first. So we're just waiting for a date in August for it to go.
Welsh Government.
Welsh Partnership.
Partnership.
It's the Welsh Partnership Business Committee.
That is an important link. Alan?
Yeah, thank you for the report. It's really comprehensive. Just a couple of comments. I know it's right to show the phase 2 endoscopy as a red, but I suppose I share frustration in terms of the business case came through here last July. It's been with the Welsh Government for 12 months per se. And picking up on your earlier point of we put things in and then you get into it.
So I have a view which that pharmacy presentation gave me this morning. If you looked at the pharmacy presentation in the showcase event, we had impact and what it meant directly into the patient. The same with the mental health. We had impact and what it meant to the patient. There's an opposite way of showing when something doesn't happen, what's the impact? Assuming that nothing's happening doesn't have an impact other than delay, right? So I'm just wondering whether if we put something in, what is the impact of a decision not being made? And the decision not being made could be related to extended waiting lists for things as simple as and important as cancer diagnoses. So I think we mustn't divorce ourselves from the impact, both positive and negative. And in terms of the report, if you ever want an example of how you demonstrate impact with numbers, I thought the pharmacy report there said it in 2 slides. It could probably be condensed to 2, right? But that was a subject matter, all covered, and just a few words that gave you its impact. And I just wonder whether, instead of trying to put an impact assessment against everything, you theme, and then over a year you cover 4 big themes, which would have had multiple bits in the performance report, but actually consolidated into a system impact. And much more of what we do will have a system impact other than just an educational impact. I just think that just struck me as another way of expressing the data and the detail you've already got. But seriously, that Alan's point is,
Yeah.
we put something in, the work we've done, you could say the work we've done is complete.
Yeah, sorry, it was on my point. There are conversations.
I see that part of it. Just
Yeah, it is quite a tricky one because of the link with the Manchester Health Park, which in itself is quite novel because there's an integrated service provider delivering that service. So trying to come up with a model where we've got training as part of the model with an external provider in a new building, it's not there yet, is stretching our brains at the moment, but we are working closely with LHP colleagues to try and sort that out. And I think that's the bit that we need to really get the business case over the line, is that clarity on how that's actually going to work in practice. So it's to your point, it is affecting progress on endoscopy training clearly, because we would like to be doing that much more expansively now. And I think everything we know about the Imaging Academy, for example, has shown benefits of that approach. But yeah, I think the ball is slightly in our court at the moment, darling, on that.
Yeah, so the second point was then, I think I noticed a reference to the operating model going to the execs. I was just wondering, when's that coming to the board?
Yes, so August board development, we've got a chunk of time there to discuss that with you. It's a little bit later than we would have wanted because of first quarter additional activity on the IMTP and the graduate employment stuff. So, but we're just getting back on track with that, and it was an item on the agenda.
Okay, can I provide a little bit more information on the Endoscopy Academy? So Welsh Government asked P&I to take a look at it. We've got some feedback from P&I. We're factoring that into some revisions to the proposal that in terms of the relationship with Electricity Health Park, that's specifically about the inclusion of accelerated training, and it's fitting in how the accelerated training will fit in with the demanding capacity modelling that's being done to be undertaken at Electricity Health Park. So we're working that through at the moment.
Okay. Is that an issue that needs to be on the risk register?
Not at this point of thing, but we'll have conversations with them in the next couple of weeks.
The board would be interested in that. Okay, right. So you're asked to receive the report for assurance on HIW's performance for the period ending May 26. Thank you, everybody. So 4.2, approval of the performance management framework. Whoa.
So this is the HIW performance management framework for 2026-27. I've touched on some of this when talking about the performance report, but to note that it builds on last year's framework and has been refreshed to align with the revised NHS Wales accountability arrangements and supports the delivery of the HIW integrated medium-term plan, the education and training plan, and wider organisational priorities. The framework aligns our performance management to the 4 NHS Wales accountability domains of performance and delivery, quality, workforce and finance, and supports a more risk-based approach to organisational assurance. The framework seeks to further strengthen our focus on outcomes, impact, benefits realisation and organisational learning, thereby further moving us beyond activity and milestone reporting. Although mindful of the discussion we've had, I happily concede there's always more that we can do to improve that aspect of our reporting. The framework seeks to further embed the integrated performance dashboard as our single source of organisational performance information, thereby supporting consistent reporting, assurance and decision making, and noting that the dashboard is used as the source of data for the board report that you've just received. The framework has come to today's meeting so that we can ask board to approve the HIW performance management framework for 2026-27.
Comments, questions?
Yeah, I really welcome the move towards outcomes and impact. But I think for me, and I touched upon it, Richard, in the earlier one, I think there's 2 clear lines of sight. Is that, did we deliver what we said we did? And when we said we would, and what type of difference that actually made. And I wonder, I noticed when I was reading it, it was very much about HIW's own performance. But it'd be good to sort of track or see where we can do the contributions to the wider, so our impact is done, so we can start sort of looking at the outcomes across the wider NHS Wales workforce. So, you know, for me, I think that would be something to sort of build upon afterwards, but no, really welcome it.
Any other comments? Richard, I've got an observation.
Yeah.
And it's to when we start to do something. What are we expecting this to do? So I think that's a good start. What are we expecting this to achieve? Is it on trajectory to achieve it? When we achieved it, did it have the impact we thought it would have?
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting one, right? Because what I was struck with in the particularly the pharmacy and the mental health presentation system unit is we started both of those many years ago. Mental health workforce plan, we started that work during COVID. So we did digital engagement with pharmacy, particularly changes to foundation training and all of the changes to the education standards. I remember taking a business case into Welsh Government probably in the first year of HAW. So it's something about in a business cycle, we're not always going to see the impact of things that we're doing because of the nature of the work that we do. So how do we look at it over the longer term in terms of that benefits realisation, the evaluation of the impact will all come through as performance management information in the here and now. This probably links into the conversation we're going to have in the August board as well about evaluating impact and how we go about doing that as an organisation. So it's definitely important to capture impact and outcomes. But a lot of the work we do, you might know that we've done the things we said we would do, but we don't know that they've had a difference until further down the line. And that often is outside of 12-month reporting period. So just trying to think about how do we do that in a simple, straightforward way. But you know, the solutions-based training impact on patients, for example, wouldn't have been we started doing this at the start of the year. You're there.
Yeah.
Same with the pharmacy, it took many years to give people the independent prescribing skills that are now helping them, or the clinical assessment skills are now helping them in community pharmacies deliver improved access to patients. So it's recognising the challenge, the impact challenge, but actually it's not just as simple as building it into this report, I don't think.
That's why I think setting out our expectation at the beginning, we're doing this because the evidence suggests our expectation is that it will take 3 years to embed the training, a further 2 years to embed the clinical practice, and the outcomes will start to increase from year 8 or 9. So that actually sets an expectation. So if we got something like P&I, who's going to go across the spreadsheet, right? It'll stand out as being nothing's happening. You're just telling me numbers, but actually the impact is, you know, if decisions are made timely, you can expect, you know, an outcome for patients. And I think taking everything back to that, it's really hit me hard. Like seeing what happens to patients because of what we do is a trick. And it seems we're just doing education and training. Well, we're not actually. We're actually preparing people to provide great care. And the recipients, what the recipients need from that is what matters, as well as the experience of the student or the trainee. So, you know, this will always be picked on.
I absolutely concede and agree with all of that. The only thing I add is that in the design of our MTP this year, if one refers to those objective templates with 270 odd pages of them, the way they're structured around, in the first instance, the 3 horizons model, the inclusion of that horizon 3 was an attempt to give us that sense of what our eventual outcome would be. And the move away from simple activity milestones and into performance measures was so that pending that long-term outcome, we at least had an indication of some sort of proxy impact arising from the activity that we do in year. The risk is otherwise it becomes easy to kick the can down the road and almost sort of fob off impact as being eventual. We need to measure both effectively.
Yeah. So
Yeah, just one thing while we've been talking here, because the other element for me is linked to culture shift and improvement, and pharmacy is just a brilliant example of everything we've seen and described, and how we can see the impact on patients and positive and impact on GPs, although there's a tail to that, which is GPs are now seeing much more complex cases. So it's that. But if I think about another area we look at in the CQC, which is in optometry, who don't have the same good data to base on, but it's improving. They have trained optometrists to do advanced practice work quite safely within safeguards, but because of a lack of willingness, the health bodies to change the way those services are delivered, there's an element of those people who are not able to practice, and they haven't got a handle on exactly how many and where they are yet. And that then could be saying, oh, well, to us, so you haven't done what you said you'd do, but actually, because it's about changing workforce practice elsewhere, we've got to find a way of flagging that as well.
that's system opportunity, isn't it?
It is, but yeah, I don't say to Rich, I haven't got an answer for how you do it, but there is something about flagging it, that this is where you could do more, but these are the
Give the data,
challenges.
give that data to the ophthalmic surgeons who are now.
Yeah, but they don't want, some of them don't want to change their way of work.
And that's where, we plug in some efforts like the national programmes, like Agored, etc., because they need to help us leverage those benefits. Otherwise, we'll just stop. Let's just stop doing what we're doing, because it's not a good use of resources.
How you reflect that in the report.
Okay,
It's very good.
can I ask you to approve the HIW performance management framework?
Yes.
Thank you very much. You're on a roll there. You're on a roll. Right. I'll give you a break a minute. Director of Finance report.
To the rest. Yeah, thank you. So the report shared sets out the financial position as at the end of Q3. So we reported a small underspend of just over 86,000 against our balanced revenue plan for 26-27. We've also formulated a forecast of around £397,000 surplus. And the reasons for the forecast and the performance year to date are shown in table 1 by expenditure category and against delegated budgets of each executive director. But broadly, we've got a small overperformance against income targets. Our pay variation is currently offsetting the vacancy factor savings target that we created to achieve a balanced resource plan. And then we've got some variation against non-pay. It's quite early in the year for our commissioning areas, so we don't have very detailed information at the moment to be able to show any variation against those cohorts in our commissioning budgets. But as soon as we do have that, we will be able to share a report. We've also included in the report a table in Appendix 2, which shows all of the different risks and opportunities that we're tracking. So where we're not able to, I suppose, quantify with any certainty, but we're aware of an issue that could present, we're including it in this table, and we will keep including that in the agenda. And when we do become certain of the information or the figures, then we will bring it into our forecast as we have done in previous years. In terms of capital, we've got a small discretionary capital allocation of 112,000 and some strategic capital that is directed towards the CODI programme and the IT refresh programme as well. So we've spent 121k to the end of June, and we have plans in place to actually be able to spend the rest of it within this financial year. And just finally on our PSPP target, so we are monitored against this, and we are currently aiming to achieve that
at your end. So we are paying 98.1% of our non-NHS invoices within the target 30 days. And we've worked hardest to try and get the NHS invoices up to that level as well. So we're currently also paying 98.8% of our NHS invoices within that time scale. Stop there and ask if there are any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you for, it's not specifically around the finances, but it was just in terms of our forecast. It was the issue around the delayed recruitment grad scheme, and just whether what an update on that really. So I think perhaps I've missed that we had a delay and just where we're going.
Yeah, we've been undertaking through feedback from the system and Lynn with them ourselves. We've been undergoing a review of the graduate management training scheme. Part of that has been looking at the education that's underpinning it. So certainly some of a lot of our graduates are coming with masters. We've required them to do a master's. And actually the feedback is that people, that the graduates would prefer more time in on the shop floor in undertaking the role. So we've still got an education component to it, but it's a more flexible, more flexible level 7 qualification as opposed to that for masters. So we've spent the time in that modernisation, engaging with the system, talking to education providers, and we'll be launching soon.
And we will have,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So I'm asking to note the revenue financial position. So
It's John first.
oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Ahead of myself, John.
So, Rhiannon, I heard what you said with regards to some of the actions that you have got in place or are thinking about to deal with this surplus and mitigate. I think it would be useful as a board that we are clear what those are in order to ensure that as a board we got assurance around a position towards the end of the year that we've managed that budget and that we've got to our statutory duty of break even. So I think how we're going to manage it, I think, is critical. You did intimate to us that you've got things in place. I think we should see those. And the other question related to we've now been in a position where 331 million is ring fenced, isn't it? So that how are we managing the flexibility in how we allocate that? Because that now is a little bit more restrictive for us in how we can use it. So what discussions are taking place with Welsh Government as to what we can use it for, what we can't, and how are we being proactive about that, particularly in us as a board ensuring that we're delivering our strategic objectives.
So I suppose in terms of the ring fence allocation, is a taken report. So we have identified exactly where that ring fenced quantum is across our budget. So we can report against it. It's a bit of a tricky quantum because every pay award, every change is changing that figure. So the resident doctor pay award, every pay award is actually changing it for us. So it feels a bit as if we're going to have to just keep reconciling to it in year. We're reporting against it through our monthly monitoring return to Welsh Government. And then I suppose just to pick up on your earlier point, at the moment we've got very little variation in our position. But I guess as we go through the year, because it is those commissioning budgets, that potentially is where the variation and the opportunity is going to sit. So we'll report it here first to, I suppose, understand if there are strategic objectives we want to take forward. And then presumably there is a conversation with Welsh Government about, do you agree that we can use it for this purpose? We can fund it out of this ring fence allocation, notwithstanding the other conversations about the baseline review on the 5 million.
That's helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
I think that links back to the previous conversation, isn't it, about we're waiting now to have a discussion about the baseline review, because that really is the starting point for, okay, what happens then about the ring fencing, what happens about 5 million. But to this point though, John, that ring fencing is not affecting delivery of strategic objectives, so just to be really clear on that. there are some areas where so statutory mandatory training we've talked about already might be one of those. The ops management programme might be another one we talked about the last board meeting. That we now have costs that we know are over and above what we would ordinarily have available that could be utilised against and spend. And we've also got in the last week or so the emerging fill rates as far as universities are aware at the moment for some of those September cohorts, so we can start to understand, as we are said, what the trend will be.
Thank you. Thank you, Leanne.
It's just linked into the conversation we're already having. I think in terms of the forecast outing, you've identified 397. You're sensibly reporting to Welsh Government is very keen. That's a sound approach, given that the baseline review is outstanding. So I welcome that. I suppose the other part, as we get into, as you said, as we get into the year, understanding the financial position, both the ring fence, the non-ring fence, likewise on the floor, it's going to be more challenging this year. And I know at the moment it's early days, but by the September report, we'll probably have more of the information on that split, although it clearly will make it hard for people to track going forward.
Anybody any more now? Don't want to miss anybody. Right, okay. Can we note the revenue financial position for month 3 against the revised delegated budgets as set out in the resource plan for 2026-27? Yeah, definitely. Approval of duty of quality annual report.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we brought slides to the AGM this year because originally the AGM was going to be in September, and the report itself, whilst we've presented it to you today, needs to be, we need to have the Welsh language translation, which is why it's not ready to release, because we didn't have the capacity with the team, because you're helping with everything else, but also for it to have all the right graphics and everything. So it's here for you today to approve, and then we'll go through those 2 processes, and then it'll be ready to be released to Welsh Government. But I thought I'd leave it open for any questions rather than repeat what I did with the slides. Second.
Welcome. It really good to see it. I've got one, and it's a comment, and it was just to commend the fact that it's all audit gave it substantial assurance. It's just one recommendation, so I just wanted to say that on record and say, yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Substantial.
So, Chair, there are many positives within the report, and I like a lot of the work that it talks about. It was very interesting to read. You know, there were many examples within the report around, and don't take this the wrong way, around very positive activity. But this goes back to the conversation that we've had earlier at board today, which is around us moving from activity and, let's say, outputs, which this talks a lot about. 471 staff completing QI, ST, it talks about staff attending duty. There's a lot of activity, which is positive. What I would say we would try and hopefully move towards is more what I would call outcomes. So the quality report is demonstrating outcomes from this activity and these outputs. And that's the conversation we've had today, which is around the impact. So I welcome the conversation. All my challenge, Sam, would be great report, good to see the activity, but if we can have a narrative around, well, what does this mean in terms of outcomes for staff and patients, and what does this mean in reality? Accepting what Alex has said, that this doesn't mean it can be now. Some of them can be, and it will be over a period of time. I think that would be very helpful for us as a board.
I absolutely agree, and we're going to have a different way of approaching this for the coming year. So we've moved with a similar model for last year, but I've met with Ian and Tom because really quality is across the functions, and we're going to look at how do we build this report from September onwards for the year. So to really focus that build of where, again, that impact, the so what element of quality, and how do we build that through? So we move from a collection of this is the great stuff we do to that impact, and it really feeds into this session we'll do at the board development afternoon about some different methodologies that we could use for some of the work. So it won't be just one, but how can we look at some of the proven methodologies to actually get that impact evaluation.
Thank you, Sam.
Putting my head into that end of that sentence, do we actually reflect the quality, future quality annual reports of the trusts and health boards? If we were to chat GPT search impact of training, on quality and training, on quality and duty of quality, would we get it? Would there be any Richter scale demonstration of impact?
Interesting. I've asked Welsh Government whether they synthesise the reports because they get them from everyone. So what do they do with them?
Yeah.
Because I'd be really interested in learning the thematic learning.
Very good question.
And I asked it at my induction, the board induction programme to Welsh Government, and he said, "Well, we don't at the moment." I thought, well, I said, "Well, I'm new, but I think that's a bit of a shame because there must be so much rich learning in here. You know, if everyone is saying it's a patient safety issue attached to X, we probably need to pivot some resources and things, you know." So I think it's a shame that we're all doing these and there's nowhere where we're having a central conversation about it.
Okay. I'm asking you to approve the annual quality report 25-26. Yes?
Yeah.
Diolch. Richard, time for approval of civil contingencies and emergency plan annual report 25-26.
So the Civil Contingencies Report, specifically the Emergency Preparedness, Resilience and Response (EPRR) annual report, is an annual statutory reporting requirement. It provides assurance that HIW has in place appropriate emergency preparedness, resilience and business continuity arrangements, and, if approved by board, will be submitted to NHS Wales Performance and Improvement. The report has been developed according to the template provided by NHS Wales Performance and Improvement and confirms that HIW continues to maintain proportionate emergency preparedness and business continuity arrangements in accordance with our responsibilities as a Category 2 responder under the Civil Contingencies Act 2004. During 2025-2026, we've completed business continuity plan and business impact assessment reviews across all directorates. We've undertaken organisation-wide directorate-level scenario testing with lessons learned used to inform the continuous improvement of organisational resilience. And somewhat out with the scope of this report, we've some executive team testing scheduled for next week to support our ongoing efforts to ensure compliance. We've strengthened programme governance by means of the expansion of the Crisis Management and Business Continuity Programme Board to include organisational-wide representation, and we've reviewed and updated our cyber incident response plan. No significant risks or areas of non-compliance have been identified through the annual assurance process, so we're asking board to approve the 2025-26 Emergency Preparedness, Resilience and Response Annual Report, that's a mouthful, for submission to NHS Wales.
Comments?
I mean, this is a really good fun. I was reflecting based on some of the conversations we've had about climate. And I'm not suggesting you change it, but I think going forward there's something here about climate emergency, and if there is going to be something around not working in certain buildings above certain temperatures, what's that going to mean? I mean, that's a huge issue across all sorts of sectors, but it didn't feel to me as though there was enough in here about climate water supplies going off, you know, so that is the what we get, what when they lost water supplies to all the terminals. Are those sorts of issues which would continue, just maybe going forward, something we considered? I would expect the government to start looking at that, but
The testing that we're doing next week, so this is for 26-27, without wishing to give away the game away for execs around the table, includes a climate scenario. So hopefully next year's report will be more.
You've got this best on.
thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the comprehensive report. I think my question is, this is the second report to be submitting to NHSP&I. Did we have any feedback from the first report, or specifically on ours, or any general feedback from them?
The honest answer is I cannot recall having any feedback. That doesn't necessarily mean we received something.
If you did, would it have had a significant impact?
So,
Not
questions. Let's check. But I think it's a good point because again, producing these documents, then it's helpful for us. We need to have these documents, but I think it's kind of ways of learning then.
With the improvements going back.
Yeah.
Ted, you'll be amazed to know that this place was almost sub-aqua not 3 years ago. Yeah, so much sub-aqua that there was a real threat to the IT. The inundation came down the Treforest trading estate and then pooled across the roundabout over there. So actually the climate effect has been felt very strongly here. So was climate emergency one of the parameters that P&I put forward to be looked at?
It's part of the suite of scenarios that they see as prompting us having to enact our emergency preparedness procedures.
So the other thing is the inquiry into the pandemic had multiple questions about emergency planning. So were they reflected in this? See, I think that if they weren't, that's an own goal.
Yeah, I think the honest answer is no. I don't think we refer to it.
So going forwards, we should expect climate, and we should expect contingencies against. And seeing that Ebola has got its head above the parapet again in the world, I think we mustn't just rely on the centre thinking about what we need to be prepared for. I think we have to actually, very physically, this building was at risk. And we have a lot of people in training where COVID had a massive impact on how you train and what we expose trainees and students to during their training. So I think there is a real business bit of this. But we're asking for this.
Sorry, Chair. I was on the back of something you said, well, on a different paper, and we were talking about, if we extracted information from other people's plans using AI to see whether there was kind of mentions. Is there anybody else's plan out there that has something of relevance for HERW? So if anyone in terms of their emergency plan would think, we will.
I think that's where you need to understand what the role of PI is.
Exactly. So I just think it'd be really helpful at that point, because if somebody else has
someone should be doing it.
Yeah, somebody needs to do it and saying, well, actually, there's a role here that we think HIW are doing, and we may not be aware of, and that it hasn't been shared, and that really does link into that. Should get that feedback. This is just not a process of people in this organisation having to fill in return after return after return with no follow up on it or understanding what it has changed as well.
I think that's a message that would be worth communicating to the centre. Right. I'm asking you to approve the 25-26 Emergency Preparedness Resilience Response, known as EPRR. annual report for submission to NHS Wales Performance and Improvement. Okay, thank you very much. No. Approval of Welsh Language Scheme annual report.
Diolch yn fawr. Bydd angen eich trysfonau chi arnoch chi, felly yn rhoi arholiad I chi, i'n ysgol heddi. Felly diolch I chi am y cyfle I gyflwyno y adroddiad blynyddol cynllun yr iaith Gymraeg a siarad 2025-26. Dwi'n trysfonau'n gweithio'n iawn?
Oes listening.
Pawb ti'n clywed? Ydw i'n clywed? Lyfli. Mae hwn yn adlewyrchu blwyddyn arall o gynnydd wrth yn gorffori'r iaith Gymraeg ar draws addysg a gwerthu Cymru a wrth yn sefydlu ni'n goll sy'n dylanwadu ar draws y system ehangach gyda'r gwasanaeth iechyd. George, would you symud mlaen, please? Next slide, please, George. Felly, fel gwelwch chi, brif neges fan hyn yw un o sicrwydd a chydymffurfiau 100% da'n cynllun ni ar draws y blwyddyn. Ond mae hyn yn dangos fwy na chydymffurfiaeth, wrth gwrs, mae'n dangos bod profiad cadarnhaol cyson gyda phobl sy'n dewis I wneud â ni drwy gyfrwng y Gymraeg a'n staff hefyd. Mae hefyd wedi bod yn flwyddyn o baratoi, fel dyn ni'n gwybod. Mae'r aelodau'n gwybod bod y llygonnau yn dod I rym ar y cyntaf o Hydref. Felly mae gwaith sylweddol wedi wneud ar draws y sefydliad sicrhau bod ni'n barod gyda trefniadau llywodraethu, adolygiadau polisi yn gysylltu â staff a chynllunio gweithredol mwyn datblygu hyn yn dda. Tu hwnt I gydymffurfiaeth, ni'n gwybod bod y cynlluniaeth ni'n cyd-fynd yn agos iawn am mwy na geiriau, a dyn ni wedi parhau I ddarparu arweinyddiaeth genedlaethol trwy'r rhaglen mwy na geiriau. Yn gynyddol, mae'r Gymraeg yn cael ei gweld yn rhan greiddiol o gynllunio'r gweithlu, ansawdd addysg a gwella gwasanaethau. Mae hwn yn cynrychioli'r newid diwylliannol dyn ni yn awyddus i'w weld. Falle mae'r cyrhaeddiad mwyaf y cael yw bod y Gymraeg bellach yn cael ei hyngarffori yn fwy mewn cynllunio strategol o'r cychwyn cyntaf yn hytrach na ychwanegu yn ôl weithredol. Mae hyn yn dangos ei lledrwydd yn dillni o ymwneud â'r Gymraeg a gweithio'n ddwyieithog yn dod yn rhan o busnes arferol y sefydliad yn hytrach na gynofyniad ychwanegol. Felly ar y cyfan, mae'r adroddiad yn dangos bod addysg a gwella iechyd Cymru yn parhau arwain drwy'r siampl ar draws y sector. Slide nesaf, please, Joe. Next slide, please, Joe. Diolch. Felly, os ti'n edrych ar effaith, cefnogodd yn gwasanaeth gyfieithu yn dros 5.5 biliwn o eiriau yn cael ei cyfieithu yn ystod y blwyddyn sy'n dangos llwyth gwaith sylweddol. Ond yr hyn hoffwn I dynnu eich sylw chi ato fe yw'r 91 digwyddiad yma lle oedd angen cyfieithu ar y pryd. Mae hwnna'n dwblu'r digwyddiadau gyda ni yn y flwyddyn flaenorol. Felly mae hyn yn adlewyrchu'r galw ar draws y sefydliad I hwyluso'r Gymraeg mewn digwyddiadau a hefyd cynyddu capacity randdeiliad I gyfrannu drwy gyfrwng Cymraeg yn y digwyddiadau ni. Dyn ni wedi datblygu'r capacity I hwyluso hyn yn fewnol, felly dyn ni wedi talu yn allanol I ddarparu'r cyfieithu ar y pryd. Mae fe hyd at rhyw 20,000 o bunnau, felly mae hwnna'n arbediad ni fel sefydliad. Dyn ni hefyd, fel chi'n gweld, yn cefnogi nifer o gyfleoedd recriwtio dwyieithog, felly bod chyfynion yr iaith Gymraeg yn cael ei ystyried yn briodol wrth ddenu'r gweithlu addas tuag ato ni, a mae gwaith yn gorffori pellach ar y gweill o ran hyn. Mae 90 aelod o staff bellach wedi cyfnodi I sgiliau iaith ar ESR, sy'n darparu sylfaen llawer cryfach I ni ar gyfer cynllunio'r gweithlu nag oedd o'r blaen. A hefyd mae fe'n rhoi proses gydarnach ni yn ei lle gyda'r adran bobl. Mae datblygu staff yn parhau I fod yn blaenoriaeth. Dyn ni, fel ydych chi'n gwybod, wedi newid yn dillni o fesur sut mae staff yn ymgysylltu â'r Gymraeg. Felly ni'n gwybod bod 48 yn ymgysylltu a dysgu Cymraeg yn rheoledd. A hefyd mae wedi bod yn braf iawn fel cynnydd yr aelodau hynny o staff mewn fforymau cyhoeddus yn defnyddio'r Gymraeg. Felly mae hwnna'n gael yn ogol iawn.
Dyn ni hefyd wrth gwrs yn ogystal â darparu gwersi dysgu Cymraeg yn chwarae ran allweddol o ran ymwybyddiaeth iaith ar dros y system. Felly nid yn unig yn staff ni'n fewnol, ond yn hefyd yn rhan o arweinwyr clinigol, yn rhan o'r hyfforddiant ar gyfer pob aelod newydd o fwrdd annibynnol ar draws Cymru. Felly mae'n hanfodol bod ni'n tynnu hyn at eu sylw nhw. Dyn ni hefyd wedi bod yn chwarae ran arweiniol gyda'r Llywodraeth yn paratoi at ymgysylltu gyda'r Urdd a'r Eisteddfod Genedlaethol a digwyddiadau eraill er mwyn hyrwyddo gyrfaoedd a physigrwydd y Gymraeg yn y gwasanaeth iechyd. A ni wedi ymgysylltu â dros 1,500 o bobl drwy'r fforymau yma. Un llwyddiant hefyd, dwi'n gwybod bod chi'n ymwybodol ohono fe, yw'r adnoddau dyn ni wedi bod yn darparu yn ystod y flwyddyn, enghraifft y llwybr gofalu drwy'r Gymraeg. Oedd hyn mor llwyddiannus, oedd rhaid i ni archebu ail-argraffiad bron yn syth. A hwnna wedi cael ei ddarparu dros nifer o'n partneriad ni drwy Prifysgol Wrecsam, Prifysgol Abertawe, drwy octegwyr hefyd, drwy ddedyrwyr a hefyd drwy'r fferyllwyr. Felly mae hwn yn dangos y deheuad at weithredu'n ymarferol. Mae'n dod drwy alwad yn uniongyrchol wrth myfyrwyr oedd eisiau'r adnodd yma wrth iddyn nhw fynd allan am leoliad. Felly os llwn ni symud ymlaen, please, Joe. Diolch. Felly mae'r gwaith yma i gyd yn dangos yn cyflwyniadau ni wrth gynyddu yn dylanwad strategol ni ar draws y system. Felly, wrth edrych mlaen, i ni'n gwybod mae'r blaenoriaeth gyntaf i weithredu y safonau iaith yn llwyddiannus. Mae'r pwyslais wedi symud o baratoi ac darpariaeth gyson gyda chefnogaeth grŵp lliwio safonau'r iaith wedi sefydlu yn bwrpasol a hefyd bod ni'n sicrhau'r oruchwyliaeth yma yn sefydliadol. Dyn ni wedi bod yn targedu grwpiau penodol er mwyn sicrhau bod nhw'n deall i dyletswyddau nhw hefyd. A mae'r rhaid cyfadde, dyn ni wedi gweld ymchyd, dyn ni wedi gweld bod ymbychu adran ymhellach ar hyd y daith nag eraill o ran dealltwriaeth wrth safonau. Ac wedyn mae hyfforddiant a sesiynau wedi targedu wedi rhoi yn ei lle ar eu cyfer nhw. Mae'r galw o masnaethau draethog yn parhau i gynyddu yn ymwedig o ran cyfieithu ar y pryd fel dyn ni wedi nodi. Felly, dyn ni'n parhau i fuddsoddi yn arloesau digidol gan gynnwys cof cyfieithu, llif gwaith a chymorth deallusrwydd artiffisial i wella effeithlonrwydd y broses. Un elfen hanfodol dyn ni wedi gweithredu yn ystod y blwyddyn yw datblygu'r berthynas adeiladol yma gyda'r Comisiynydd Iaith. A dyn ni wedi gweithio'n galed ar hyn ac mae wedi cael ei adlewyrchu yn y ffaith eu bod nhw wedi ymateb yn gadarnhaol ac wedi cadarnhau a chaniatau pob elfen dyn ni wedi gofnydd yn ystyried yn wahanol neu ymestyn yn ystod y broses o sefydlu safonau. Tu hwnt i hyn, dyn ni wedi dod yn ffynhonnell o arbenigedd ar draws y sector yn ystod blynyddoedd diwetha. Felly, er enghraifft, mae'r Comisiynydd wedi gofyn i ni siarad yn eu cynhadledd nhw ar gyfer sectorau newydd sy'n dod dan y safonau. Dyn ni wedi cynhyrchu blog ar eu cyfer nhw a gweithredu'n rhan o astudiaeth achos ar sut maen nhw'n gweithredu safonau ar draws y sector. Felly, byddwn ni'n parhau i weithio ar adeiladu'r berthynas honno. Dyn ni hefyd yn parhau i gefnogi mentre penodol i broffesiynau fel rwydwaith fferyllwyr drwy gyfrwng Gymraeg. Mae hynny'n cael sylw nawr ym mwy na geiriau'r hydref sy'n cael ymwybwyntio ar ofal sylfaenol. Mae hefyd yn cael sylw yn yr Eisteddfod Genedlaethol er enghraifft. Felly ar y cyfan mae wedi bod yn flwyddyn adeiladol sy'n adlewyrchu gwaith diwyd tîm yn Roddgar sy'n yn rhoi mewn safle da er mwyn gweithredu'r safonau o fis Hydref mlaen.
Diolch yn fawr. Blwyddyn llwyddiannus iawn. Right. Any questions or comments?
Chair, thank you very much indeed. Diolch yn fawr iawn. My question really relates to, again, assurance for board with regards to our readiness for the Welsh standards coming in October. The report talks about a group being established, and so are we confident that we will meet the necessary standards, that risks associated with that will be managed, and we've got a plan in order to mitigate some of those risks?
If I could respond to that, with regard to the process of setting standards, we had a questionnaire to complete about all the standards we'd be served with and where we foresaw any elements of query or difficulty with regard to that. So we went back to the Welsh Language Commissioner with our recommendations for some of the standards. We didn't feel that a couple of them were relevant to us, and they have accepted that and have taken it out of our final settlement. And there were some others that we thought we needed an extension on, for example, our intranet. So we have been granted an 18-month extension on ensuring that our intranet is fully bilingual, and we have a plan in place for that. And then the governance group has been set in place, risks will be established, and that will be monitored constantly.
I have to say, right, the language is important, but its importance is going to be much more telegraphed going forward. And that one piece of work about Welsh and service, serving through Welsh, I think that's a theme that I saw picked up in Agored in the nursing graduates. I think we need to work alongside our health board and trust colleagues to ensure that people feel comfortable and are encouraged to provide the care through the medium of Welsh when the patient needs it and wants it. And as I think of certain groupings, particularly around mental health and particularly around giving consent, where people's understanding is Welsh is their first language, then understanding what you're consenting to seems to be a simple hit. But in terms of effort, what I do think, and what I feel and what I hear when I go around, is the energy that you and the team bring, and a feeling of it not being threatening, not being unnecessary, actually being encouraging and being as fun as it can be. So I would hope that the fun element and the encouraging element remains strong, regardless of whether we meet the standards or not. I think it's great to try hard, and maybe we'll fail, but we're at least not for the lack of trying. So from me, well done. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, fun is part of the nudge theory when it comes to behavioural change. So that's something we are working on. And we are the key partner for Welsh Government with regard to leading in bilingual Wales for senior managers, changing that behaviour, and that feast, that fun idea is part of that. And one of the key groups we'll be targeting initially are senior managers in mental health. So that's a piece of work that we've got, going on as well. And also we have a piece of work on primary care, a national resource, so talking about people's responsibilities, but also making it easy what they can do and just helping them as much as possible.
Good.
I just wanted to share with you, I've been asked to shortlist for the Nursing Student Award of the Year for the Royal College of Nursing. And out of the 10 students that we're in open, so I'm not going to give anything away, but out of 10 to shortlist, 2 of them were nominated because of their use of the Welsh language to support patients. One was a child and a family, and one was in a mental health setting. So it was really lovely to go from policy to practice and to read this beautiful nomination about how that individual had used their Welsh language skills to. And if you join me with a meeting for the NMC, didn't need to talk about actually the importance of the Welsh language as they're reviewing their standards and code. So I just wanted to share those 2 examples. It's really, really good.
Yeah, getting our tentacles in everywhere.
So I'm asking members to approve the Welsh Language Annual Report for 25-26. And I'm asking you to thank the team. And I wish you every bit of energy going forward, because my husband was sick.
Yeah.
Right. Agenda item 4.7, Wellbeing of Future Generations Act update. Richard.
So the purpose of this report is to provide the board with assurance that HOW has met its responsibilities under the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015 during 2025 to 26. The report demonstrates how the principles of the Act have been embedded within our organisational planning, governance and performance management processes, the alignment between the principles of the Act and our IMTP and performance management framework, and the development of an integrated impact assessment approach, enhanced board reporting and strengthened consideration of 5 ways of working within organisational decision making. The report also describes our extensive partnership with NHS Wales and wider stakeholders, and our priorities for continuing to embed the Act during the implementation of the IMTP 2026 to 29. If endorsed by board today, the report will, once translated, be published on our website, thereby fulfilling our statutory requirement to publish an annual report detailing our progress in achieving our wellbeing objectives. We'd therefore like to ask board to take assurance that HOW has continued to embed the principles of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act within our government, planning, performance management and delivery arrangements during 25-26, and approve publication of the report on the HOW website.
Richard. Comments, questions? Uniquely Welsh things. This is bigger. This has come through our agenda. Many of the bits have come right the way through our agenda today. So I'm asking you to receive this report. Will you take assurance that we've continued to embed the principles? Yeah. And approve publication of the annual Wellbeing of Future Generations Act report 25-26. Thank you very much. Is that it for you, Richard?
That is it from me. I can confirm that we didn't have feedback in respect of the civil contingencies report last year, so I'll actually following that to get feedback this.
That would, the board would be interested in that. Thank you very much. So communications and engagement report. Hi.
Chair. This report provides a reflection of how we are continuing to transition and increase our organisational maturity in terms of communication and engagement. We continue to move from a reactive service to a more strategic, insight-led and coordinated approach. This has strengthened governance and planning, improved stakeholder targeting and increased organisational ownership of communications across HEIW. There's strong evidence of delivery. Communications and engagement team completed 143 IMTP strategic impact activities against 106 planned. We've strengthened our digital profile, achieving engagement rates above industry benchmarks. We've secured 101 media mentions and delivered more than 150 targeted mail shots, also achieving above industry averages. Communications activity is more focused on demonstrating value, outcomes and organisational impact rather than simply promoting the activity. Messages have been more consistent, better targeted and more accessible, helping stakeholders receive the right information at the right time. This has improved our visibility and recognition as a national workforce education and leadership organisation and strengthened our position as a trusted voice on workforce issues. It's also supported relationships with partners, improved engagement quality and increased awareness of workforce programmes, investments and innovation across Wales. We've provided considerable coordinated communication support for a number of highly complex and sensitive national workforce issues. This has helped ensure messages were timely, consistent and targeted, reducing the risk of fragmented communication
and supporting confidence among students, partners, stakeholders and professional audiences. While stakeholder understanding of HIW's role continues to vary, we feel the report demonstrates clear progress in strengthening our organisational visibility, consistency and competence. It also shows why our priorities for 26-27 focus on a more sustainable and distributed model and embedding communications capability across the organisation.
Thank you, Howard. So, any comments or questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Howard for the paper and recognise that Howard is on comment after tomorrow to a new adventure. Where she's going to learn a lot, but also we will really miss her in school work that she's done over many years. She's been here almost as long as myself and Shannon. So that's a long time. I think on this particular issue, it goes back to what we just mentioned around the target operating model, because clearly this is a key part of that. So I think we'll have a chance to have a conversation about how we're progressing on this agenda as part of that, because we are a complex organisation to understand internally and externally. It's not self-evident what we do, and so it is something which is a constant work in progress, really. And you know, at the end of the day, it takes two partners to understand, isn't it? It's not just what we can do. So lots of good progress, I think. I think a really good example that we should take a bit of time to evaluate is the communication plan we put in place for the end of the graduate streamlining process in June, which we knew was going to be a difficult monthly time. And I think by approaching that with principles of being transparent, communicating with all parties in a way that makes sense to them, and being timely and coordinated about it, I think really helped navigate through a difficult period. The most important objective of that was giving students as much certainty as possible, as quickly as possible about what next, but also engaging with different partners. I think that the result of that was clear, I think, in terms of some of the coverage of that and the feedback on that. So being more proactive and really paying attention to those relationships is really key. It's really paid off. But yeah, lots more for us to go at here. Big progress.
Any other comments?
Yeah, Alex has touched on what I wanted to say, but I do want to just emphasise it because it was such a difficult time. And I just think the way those communications just took so much heat out of the scenario. I mean, we can all imagine what the media coverage might have been like. So I don't know whether that is sort of within your priorities for this year, but about being proactive with that and starting those messages sooner. So you had to react very quickly, and that was done. With a lot of people involved, I know, in developing that, but just as a workforce supply oversight group, we'll be looking much further ahead so that the communications can be turned into that. There'll still be a need for that urgent messaging because that's how the media works. But
absolutely,
I wanted to say I thought it was very good.
Thank you. A lot of work, teamwork has been immense across the organisation on this, and it is part of our plan going forward, isn't it, to really look at the communication with students. So we are on the front foot from the start, managing the situation and giving them the information they need, and also the public, because we've seen an awful lot of stories being myths circulating, but with more pushing out of information, more organisations knowing exactly what the message is helping to manage the situation and concerns. Like you say, we're always going to have to react sometimes, and there is an increase in political and anti-establishment things going on social media. We just have to keep doing our best. But we start off positively with clear communication. We should be in a good place.
Right. Well, With that, then I'm going to ask you to note the progress made in delivering the communications engagement strategy. Receive assurance regarding the increasing maturity, governance and strategic alignment of communications engagement delivery across HEIW, and endorse the proposed priorities and direction of travel for comms, communications and engagement during 26-27. Is that okay?
Yes.
And on a personal note, from me and Nara, thank you for all your support for me personally over, oh God. Yeah, right, we'll leave that secret, but thank you so much. Okay, and enjoy your opportunity. 4.9 Annual Revalidation Assurance Reports. Tom.
Thank you. Before coming to the paper, just to provide everyone with a little bit of context, all fully registered doctors have to have an annual appraisal and a cycle of 5 years where they are revalidated. And that appraisal involves documents and evidence of their continued professional development aligned to their scope of practice, their involvement in quality improvement activity during the year, reflections on complaints and incidents, and a lot of other stuff. So it's quite an important process. Every doctor has to be connected to what's called a designated body, which is the statutory body that oversees their appraisal, and that organisation will have a responsible officer. For us in HEIW, we have sort of 4 functions linked to appraisal and revalidation. But just to give you the context of where this paper sits, one of our functions is delivering GP appraisal. So for all GPs, substantive GPs who are no longer in training programs, we employ GP appraisers in HEIW and we deliver appraisal for all GPs in Wales on behalf of the health boards. We also deliver the CPD that emerges as learning needs from that appraisal process. We host the Mars platform, the single platform for the whole of Wales for doctors who are not in training programs, and we will integrate that into CODI in due course. And we also do the quality assurance of all the other designated bodies' approach to medical appraisal in Wales. So we lead on that process, recruiting external people to come with us, and we do that external QA. The purpose of this report is that 4th function, and that is our role as a designated body. So we have a statutory responsibility as an organisation, both to the regulator as well as Welsh Government, to oversee the appraisal and revalidation recommendations, which links directly with fitness to practice for all doctors in training programs. So when it comes to headcount, we are by far the largest designated body in Wales, with over 3,000 doctors connected to us. And I think the key point, moving to this paper, very briefly, the key point here for the board is that the overall position of our function as a designated body and that responsible officer function, which is the one that I hold, is very positive. We have ensured that all doctors who require that appraisal have had that. They have it via their ARCP process, which colleagues will have seen reported in other papers. It's integrated as part of that annual competency review process. We submit an annual revalidation progress report every year to the Chief Medical Officer, who is the overarching responsible officer for all medical appraisal in Wales. And as you will see from our report, 27 of the 20 domains are drag rated green. The 2 amber areas, they are important, but we do understand them. Not all of them are in our control. One of those amber ones relates to the process for transfer of information. So when doctors come to us to start with in a training program, we require transfer of information from where they've been to know there are no fitness or practice concerns and that everything is as it should be. And sometimes securing that information in a timely fashion from others is difficult. What I can say to the board, in terms of our function as a designated body, sharing information from us with other designated bodies, we have 100% compliance with that function. So a large part of that amber is outside our control. It's trying to get information out of other bodies across the United Kingdom as opposed to from internal. The other amber relates really to the way we are conducting the process, which still actually relies on a lot of manual entry and spreadsheets, which in today's world is not really the way we would do it. We can increase the efficiency, reduce error rates by digitalization of the whole process. We directly link in with the GMC Connect system to recommend people for revalidation, and fully integrating our systems. That is one of the ambitions of CODI. It is on the work plan, and that when that comes in, hopefully in the near future, that will address that. So that is in our work. So just in terms of more other levels of assurance, colleagues will see we have had internal audit look at our ARCP and appraisal processes for our doctors in training, and a report, and we were given substantial assurance on all elements of that process. And we have also just had our own external quality assurance visit, and just to reassure everybody, although we have responsibility for that quality assurance of the other designated bodies, we don't mark our own homework. So external quality assurance is done from us, from other designated bodies with representation from there. We had our second visit of this 5-year cycle in June of this year. No recommendations emerging from that, but significant positive feedback about some of the internal changes we've made to our processes to strengthen both our resilience in this process and going forward. I think the working arrangements that we have both with our host health board organisations and shared services, because that tripartite arrangement, when there are issues to do with concerns of fitness to practice about a doctor's practice, it is absolutely vital that we have those time. So the external visit commended us on the progress we have made. So going forward, I hope that the board can take assurance from this report. We are not one of the statutory responsibilities as a designated body is to ensure that there is sufficient resource to deliver appraisal appropriately. We are not asking for additional resource in this. We are refining how we deliver that process within our existing resource. And as you can see from the information, we are delivering on that function. We will continue to use quality improvement methodology to refine how we do that and support our colleagues across Wales.
Thank you, Tom. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, I've lived and breathed this for many, many years, and I've also banged my head against brick walls in health boards to try and get this actually implemented effectively. To read this is just excellent. And I think unless you sort of get into the detail and understand it, the amount of work required by the team to reach this sort of standard is phenomenal. Actually, so I just wanted to make that point, because you read the report and the workload doesn't come across to me, and I suppose because I've lived and breathed it, it's really absolutely phenomenal to get this level of assurance and to be assured externally, considering the numbers we're talking about. So for me, congratulations to the team to get to the stage.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And we can take a lot of assurance from what we've had in the report and what you've just added, Tom, in terms of your reporting back. And I think it's exactly what Judith has said. Naturally, as IMs, we're drawn to the AMPers. You always are. And again, hearing that one is outside of our control in terms of the transfer of information. But again, it's that, and also manually doing stuff, as you said yourself, is inherently risky at times. And I suppose I'm just saying a little bit there around what potentially are the risks. I know you've talked about continuing to monitor the situation, etc., and that body should take us to another place in the future. But how should I feel as an IM citizen here with regard to those two aspects and potential risks?
The first one about the transfer of information, it can be frustrating, and we sometimes have to do tests. There are other checks in the system about serious concerns about practice and licensing and all the pre-employment checks that come out. So that those very serious end of things covered by other mechanisms. The frustration from us is the amount of work it takes, because we don't give up.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, for the doctors who are in training programs, it's relatively straightforward because we can see their ARCP on their portfolios, but it's the ones who are coming in de novo into a training program who have not been in before, who are either been in local employed posts or maybe not been working in this country. Have they had all the other checks and things done? So it's quite time consuming. As Judith alluded to, the process requires a lot of checks. In terms of the second one, the risks of that are, there are multiple safety net checks in this process, including at the GMC level. So the main risks for us are missing a recommendation for revalidation. There are windows within which you need to do it, and you need to have all the evidence to do that. And the GMC will review us based on our missed recommendations. So if we fail to hit the button, and it can be challenging to revalidate, and to do that, you need assurance that there are no fitness to practice concerns, everybody's had their available and all that information. We're very quickly contacted by the GMC within 5 days of missing it. So our missed deferral rates are very low, very low. I think the missed revalidation recommendations, sorry, I think the other thing in there that may draw your eye are the deferral, rates and what they mean. And we've had a little bit, sometimes the CMO asks us about this, because what happens, all the designated bodies in Wales get their deferral rates. And we only have three. You can either defer somebody because you haven't got all the evidence you need. You can not revalidate them, and very often there's a non-engagement element to that. And deferrals often for us are about sick leave, people not there, so they haven't done the stuff they need to show that you can revalidate. But our benchmarking with other designated bodies in Wales doesn't work. Our deferral rates will always look slightly higher, and that's because to facilitate system working, what we don't want to happen is for people to complete their medical training and then find 6 months later their revalidation date is happening again. So we may well, because it comes every 5 years, if, for example, somebody is within 6 months of completing their training, we would defer their revalidation and revalidate them at the point of their completion of training. There's an agreed rule is that irrespective of when your previous revalidation recommendation was, all doctors in training will be revalidated again at the point of their completion of training. Because otherwise somebody might end up in a health board within 3 months, and the responsible officer of that organisation has got no hope of having enough information to recommend a revalidation. So that's a really important thing that we do for the system, is we manage that. But the consequence of that is it adds a few % of people onto our deferral rates. What we do benchmark against is all the other education bodies in the UK, and we are definitely not an outlier in our deferral rates. And I can assure you we have refined our processes to bring our deferral rates down to only the things that mean you have to have a deferral. So statutory leave and the proximity to.
That's really helpful, Tom, and assured with the safety nets that you say are in place. Sean?
My question has been answered in relation to.
Thank you for the assurance. I just got to have a suggestion on part 4, because if this is going to the CMO, I'm not sure the CMO will understand substantial assurance. So it might be worthwhile explaining what that means, but also to confirm that, if I recall rightly, there were no high priority actions, and there were 2 medium priorities, and they've been completed. So much as I want to add this type of thing to give more context to that.
Yes, I think that's good advice. I can assure you the CMO does know what it all means. And we have, so again, as part of this assurance, this isn't a process that happens in isolation. So there are 2 groups. There's a revalidation group where all the teams and the leads and the responsible officers meet on a quarterly basis in Wales. And then there's another one that happens 6 monthly, chaired by the CMO, who challenges all the organisations collectively around the data and what assurances and things. So there's a lot that goes on in this space, and we have quite an important role, not just from our statutory bit, but those other 3 functions that are really supportive. They're not our statutory responsibility. Well, they're part of our core functions for government, of course, but they're not our regulatory statutory responsibility.
So, Tom, my question is related to something in the news about the Nursing and Midwifery Council in terms of recording and taking action on people's criminal records. Does that fall into our brief as part of the revalidation process?
So in some ways it does. And certainly somebody coming into our system with a criminal record obviously has an obligation to do it, and the pre-employment checks will pick up any criminal conviction, etc. And if somebody then has something of alleged criminal activity and the police are involved, police automatically notify the GMC, who let us know. The individuals professionally as a doctor
should tell you,
has an obligation to tell me and the GMC in those circumstances. So there are lots of checks and balances.
So you're assuring me that the system is intact?
The system is intact. The system is intact. No system is perfect. So I think that quality.
But there is a system.
There is a system, and it links together. This, so we would be called in immediately. I would be called in as responsible officer to any of the safeguarding if there was activity.
So my only advice to the organisation going forward is don't take this for granted.
No.
Just don't take it for granted. This should be something I would recommend. This comes annually, and there should be exceptional reporting should you, as the medical director or chief executive, have any doubts at all or any concerns about staffing. That this to me, the safety that comes out of this and the assurance we can give the public is fundamental.
And that is the plan, and we will bring this. I mean, it does. Colleagues will recognise a lot of the content from the information we bring in the ARCP, but this is presented in a slightly different way. And I just want to confirm, actually, that is part of the statutory requirement for us to present to us all.
So as much as we have an annual report on the Welsh language, on the Future Generations Act, right? I think this is a core report going forwards, and don't take it for granted. Right. So we've received the annual report, a revalidation activity regarding HAW statutory responsible as designated body, and we've taken assurance. Is that right? Yes, I think that is a important addition there. Right, 4.1, speaking of safety framework update. David.
Diolch yn fawr iawn. Cyfeirio yn Gymraeg, stwff yna. Felly na oed ddim eiliad o seconds. Okay, thank you. Felly papur i'w nodi ydy hon. Mae'n braf gallu adrodd ar y cynnydd amlaid dros 6 mis diwetha o ran ymgorffori ein fframwaith siarad yn ddiogel. Mae'n braf gallu adrodd bod 31 o 32 amcan bellach wedi cael ei asesu yn wyrdd. Yn benodol, mae'n dda gallu adrodd fod ein prifysgol yn bellach yn rhannu gwybodaeth am gwynion myfyrwyr am materion sydd yn ymwneud gyda siarad yn ddiogel. O ran yr un amcan sydd heb i gwblhau, o ran diogelu pwrpasol neu safeguarding, da ni yn gallu cadarnhau bod ein staff bellach yn cael mynediad i dîm arbenigol yn hyn o beth, ac yn bod ni'n agos iawn at gwblhau yr SLA a'r polisïau perthnasol. Ac i gloi ar nodyn uchel, rhoddodd adroddiad yr archwiliwr mewnol yn ei asesiad o ein prosesau ar gyfer siarad yn ddiogel. Fe roedd yn asesiad o sicrwydd sylweddol i agos, ac ni oedd yr unig corff yng Nghymru i gael asesiad o'r fath. Felly, gloi papur i'w nodi. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr. Take that. Right. Judith, you've taken an interest in speaking up safely, haven't you?
Yes, thank you very much for that. Yeah, it's, I don't know. I was going to say everything's in place, and I'm really comfortable with that. Sometimes when you don't get any coming through, you think, oh, is the message getting out? Or is it getting out, everything's fine? And I think it's great getting substantial assurance, but it's also not taking our eye off
Yes.
evolve to make sure that we don't sit back and say, oh, we're okay. So, but in terms of progress today, I'm very comfortable with that. Can I meet regularly, Tammy?
Can I encourage you going forward to be incessantly interested
Yes,
in the science?
you can. I will.
Incessantly interested in the science.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Just to say that Welsh Partnership Forum last week was a safety workshop, and actually the internal audit did present some of the complaints issues across Wales in terms of process. But we also had Anton Manuel giving us some feedback on the res and the importance of looking at the view of res as well, which is obviously called the race and the linkages between the two things. I think, as you just said, it's in a sense great we got into an audit screen, but actually the most important thing is that people are speaking up, that we do have some issues to look at and take on board for improvement. So, and we all know how much more difficult that must be in a health board with many thousands of staff compared with our remit. So I think is what the conversation we had in execs is very much about, well, that's great. However, let's recognise that this is about a culture change actually. It's about psychological safety and the mindset shift, not just about saying that processes can be.
Okay. We've considered it. I'm asking you to note the update in respect of the embedding of HAW speaking of safety framework for assurance. Yes, thank you. Approval of HAW's complaints policy. Ie,
diolch yn fawr iawn Cadeirydd. Felly gofyn am cymeradwyeth mae'r papur. Yn benodol, da ni'n gofyn i'r bwrdd ystyried a chymeradwyo ein polisi ymdrin a gwynion arfaethedig a llwydiedig. Mae'r polisi yn fater i'r bwrdd yn unol a'n rheolau sefydlog. Byddwch yn nodi ein bod ni wedi gwneud sawl diweddariad i'r polisi Gebron ac mae'r diwygiadau hynny'n adlewyrchu mae'n rhyw gynnau y gyfynion newydd o ran y fframwaith gwrando ar bobl Llywodraeth Cymru, sef polisi cwyno newydd y gwasanaeth iechyd yng Nghymru, a bod o hefyd yn adlewyrchu gyfynion newydd y safonau Cymraeg ynghyd â'r deddf data newydd. Felly, da ni'n gofyn ysgolch ymlaen fod y bwrdd yn ystyried ac meddwl papur. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Any comments or questions on this paper? Can I ask you to approve HAW's updated complaints policy?
It was,
sorry.
It was not. It was actually to amend the paper and say that I found two appendices.
Can I ask you to approve?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Key issue report from Audit Committee, Audit and Assurance Committee held on the 18th of June. Alan.
Thank you. It's a very straightforward committee meeting, just doing the final audit of the accounts and performance reports. I reported back in the last board meeting and gave assurance in terms of what we considered, which is dealt with in the assured section, and the committee made recommendations for performance report, accountability report, audit of the accounts report, letter representation and audit accounts to be signed. Nothing else to highlight.
Questions or comments? So we're asked to note the content of the reports of the Chair of the Audit and Assurance Committee. Note the committee recommended that the following documents be approved by the board for submission: performance report, annual accountability report, audit of annual accounts, and letter of representation. Yep, thank you very much. Education Commission Quality Committee held on the 16th of July, including ECQC annual report.
Thank you, Chair. You'll see that the item that we've put as an alert for the board is the one we've discussed already today in a number of ways. The area as well to advise, there's just a point in there that in terms of we are looking, we receive the information to make sure that we have detailed data around placed opportunities where there was a broad comment that relates to those particular specific staff groups as opposed to a general issue. And I will be meeting, in fact, meetings been set up, I think, for next week with Ian and Martin to talk about the content of that paper going forward. And as you said, the annual report from the committee is also there for approval. Thank you.
Any questions? Comments? So I'm asking you to note the content of the report from the Chair of the Education Commissioning and Quality Committee, and note the Education Commissioning and Quality Committee annual report. Yeah, thank you very much. In committee decisions, they're there for you to see. Any questions or comments? I'm asking you to note the report for information. Corporate risk register. So Alex, following on from this meeting and looking at the corporate risk register, is there anything that you feel needs further clarity?
I think there are plans in place for all of these issues. The resident doctor then goes live this weekend, so that will be a risk issue potentially, but I think it was still dependent on what arrangements was in place all of that to understand that. Budget meeting picker as part of the briefing. It's obviously on the agenda there in terms of funding. At this point in time, operationally, it is most recent changes have worked well. So, there have been various operational issues over the last 6 to 9 months when it was first launched, but the last release did go better than the previous one, which is why that's not specifically on that as a risk at this point in time. And we mentioned one earlier on, I can't remember what was the one we said we keep an eye on. So the endoscopy one, sorry, the endoscopy. So we'll keep an eye on that one. But I think at this point it doesn't need to go on a corporate risk register, it's just need the normal things that we have to deal with and also get things done. So that's my initial.
Okay, the board, any comments from board members? Okay. Yes, so I want the note on the corporate risk register to say that we've just considered and discussed. Okay. That's all right, Sarah? Yeah. And then so I'm asking you to note corporate risk register now. NHS Wales Shared Service Partnership Committee report. I'm asking you to note the report. I've not received any other urgent business. I resolve in accordance with provision section 1, paragraph 2 of the Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960. It shall be resolved that representatives of the press and other members of the public be excluded from the latter part of the meeting on the grounds it would be prejudicial to public interest due to confidential nature of the business transacted. This section of the meeting is to be held in committee. Thank you so much. Now, are we switched off now?
Charles?